Anyway, what's our final thoughts wrapping up our Esper Brains Gifts deck? And it actually felt really solid. I mean, it's crazy. It's got a ton of colors, a ton of one-ofs, but Beck Call is actually really powerful. We have enough control elements that we can live long enough to just cast it. And when we cast it, it's very hard to lose. Drawing 4 cards and getting 4 1/1s just spirals out of control. As you saw against Eldrazi and Taxes, we cast 1, drew 4, drew another one, cast it the next turn, got 4 more 1/1s, drew 4 more cards, drew another one. So over the course of 3 turns, we drew 12 cards and made 12 1/1 flyers, which took us from being very behind all game and just like trying to stabilize, trying to stay alive, to super far in front where there was just no competition at all, and we basically could win any way we wanted to. Even though our opponent drew a path for our Elishorn, we still were just so far ahead because of Beck Call. So Beck Call was insane. It is super insane when we just randomly do it like turn 3 off of Brain in the Jar or turn 4 off of Brain in the Jar. That's so much value and so hard to deal with. I think that against control decks, against mid-range decks, our deck actually performs really well. We got discard, our threats, Lingering Souls, the tokens from Beck Call are incredibly hard for those decks to deal with 1-for-1, so they really need some sort of Wrath or something like that. And then against aggro decks, I didn't feel like we were completely disadvantaged. I think where we would really struggle would be in some matchups that we didn't run into, but combo decks would probably be hard. We have discard, which is kind of our defense, the 6 discard spells, but what we don't have is any real trump cards against those decks. And we don't have any counter spells, which is kind of scary. We don't even have counter spells in the sideboard. So we're just kind of hoping that our discard will get there, which is good, but decks like Scape Shift, Titan Shift, things like that, sooner or later, even if you pick apart their hand, they're going to draw the Titan, they're going to draw the Scape Shift. Decks like Storm can be fairly resilient in the same manner, where you take away their key piece and they still draw into it. Even if you make them discard, like Past in Flame, they flash it back. So I think those are the matchups where we'd have a more difficult time. But overall, I think this deck was pretty solid, and it was really fun to play. We've played a few different Gifts decks recently, and this one was really good. And one of the most interesting parts is we were mostly using Gifts for value. Like, yeah, towards the very end of the game, we would get a bunch of flyers and use Gifts to get the Elishnorn to try to close things out in one big attack. But more often than not, our gifts were for value, getting Lingering Souls along with some lands or some removal or whatever we needed, more card draw. So we did a ton of value gifting with this deck, and it seemed to work out pretty well. So Brain in the Jar is better than I would have imagined in Modern. Even apart from the combo, it is limited. It's not exactly Ether Vial because you have to tick it up when you activate it, so you can't just leave it sit on 2 and Beck Call, Beck Call, Beck Call. And we saw that in some matchups where we were like intentionally leaving our Brain in a Jar on 1 in hopes of drawing a Beck Call, or that we would kind of like skip a turn to remove counters to get it back down to cast our Beck Calls. So we had some awkwardness there, which is the downside, but it's still really powerful. Even just Lingering Souls at instant speed catches people by surprise. So all around, I think this deck was really good and it was really fun, and I would recommend playing it. If you enjoy decks that have a lot of stuff going on and are just oozing with value, I think you'll have fun with this one, and it felt competitive enough that depending on your meta, I think it could be a real competitive deck. So, like I said, if you're expecting control mid-range, it's really good. If you're expecting aggressive creature decks, I think it's okay. If your metagame is mostly combo decks, then I think this deck will struggle more. So keep that in mind. Anyway, that's been our Much Abrew About Nothing for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos. And of course, I will talk to you soon.